The fluorescent lights of the grocery store hummed, a monotonous drone against the cheerful babble of my daughter, Lily. At 5 years old, Lily was a whirlwind of bright pink sneakers and boundless curiosity, her tiny hand clutching mine as we navigated the produce aisle. Her imagination painted every mundane errand into an adventure. The shopping cart became a spaceship, the aisles a labyrinth of discovery. We were on a quest for the perfect ingredients for her favorite berry smoothie, a simple sweet ritual that marked the end of a busy day, a small precious slice of normalcy in our often unpredictable lives. It was a typical Tuesday afternoon, mundane and comforting in its rhythm, a small island of peace in the often turbulent sea of single parenthood, until a jarring intrusion shattered the peace and irrevocably altered its quiet course. We were reaching for the last carton of organic strawberries, their vibrant, red promising summer sweetness, a burst of color against the cool green of the produce section, when a sharp, imperious voice sliced through the gentle background hum of trolleys and distant chatter. "Excuse me, are you going to hog those all day?" The words were delivered with the clipped precision of someone accustomed to immediate obedience, a tone that brooked no argument, a stark contrast to the soft murmur of everyday shopping. I turned, startled, my fingers still hovering over the berry carton. My peaceful bubble abruptly burst to face a woman who seemed to have stepped directly from the pages of a high-fashion magazine. Her tailored blazer was pristine, a stark white against her perfectly tanned skin, her blonde hair impeccably coiffed, and her expression was one of unadulterated disdain, as if the very air I breathed offended her refined sensibilities. Beside her stood a man, equally polished in a crisp, expensive polo shirt and designer sunglasses perched casually on his head, his arms crossed over a broad chest, a silent, imposing presence, a silent accomplice to her arrogance. They exuded an aura of unshakable entitlement, a sense that the world existed solely for their convenience, and that anyone who impeded it was an irritating obstacle, a minor inconvenience to be swept aside. I immediately felt a prickle of unease, a familiar tightening in my stomach that signaled impending unpleasantness, a sensation I knew all too well from navigating life's unexpected bumps and the casual cruelties of strangers. "Oh, I'm sorry," I began, my voice instinctively softening, a habit born from years of trying to de-escalate minor confrontations and avoid drawing unnecessary attention. I gestured to the single carton I held, a simple everyday item that suddenly felt like a forbidden treasure. "I just picked up one. There weren't many left." I offered a small, apologetic smile, hoping to diffuse the palpable tension, to smooth over whatever perceived slight had triggered her ire. "One?" the woman scoffed, her perfectly sculpted eyebrows arching in theatrical disbelief, as if I had just uttered the most ridiculous, outlandish statement imaginable. Her gaze swept over me, a slow, deliberate assessment lingering on my slightly worn jeans, the comfortable but not new sneakers, and then, most cuttingly, on Lily's bright, cartoon-emblazoned shirt. A gift from her grandmother, a burst of innocent joy that now seemed to attract her scorn. It was a look that stripped away dignity, a silent but potent judgment, dissecting my appearance and finding it profoundly wanting, branding me as inferior. "Please, you look like you can barely afford that. Just leave them for someone who actually needs them, or who can buy more than a single measly carton." Her tone dripped with condescension, each word a tiny poisoned dart aimed directly at my self-worth, designed to diminish me in front of everyone. My cheeks flushed hot, a wave of mortification washing over me so intensely it felt like a physical blow, a sudden, jarring impact. It wasn't just the implication that I was poor, though that stung with an unexpected sharpness, touching a raw nerve of insecurity that many single parents grapple with. It was the sheer audacity, the blatant, unprovoked cruelty, delivered with such casual, almost bored arrogance, as if insulting me was as mundane as checking her phone. Lily, sensing the sudden, sharp shift in my demeanor, the way my body stiffened, the way my breath caught in my throat, tightened her grip on my hand, her small fingers digging into my palm. She looked up at me, her big blue eyes, usually sparkling with mischief and wonder, wide with confusion and a nascent worry, a silent question forming in their depths. The man beside the woman chuckled, a low, dismissive sound that seemed to echo the woman's contempt, adding another layer to the insult, a shared moment of superiority. "Yeah," he drawled, his voice laced with a sneer that twisted his lips, revealing a flash of white teeth. "Maybe stick to the discount brands, honey. Or better yet, the bruised ones in the clearance bin. Those are probably more your speed." His words were like a second, sharper blow, a deliberate attempt to wound, to leave a lasting mark. The words hung in the air, heavy with judgment and disdain, a suffocating blanket of humiliation that seemed to press down on me, making it hard to breathe. It wasn't just the personal attack, it was the public nature of it, the way other shoppers in the aisle, drawn by the raised voices, paused, their heads turning, their eyes darting between us, some with curiosity, some with pity, some perhaps with agreement. I felt exposed, vulnerable, as if their cruel words had stripped me bare, leaving me standing defenseless in the middle of a crowded grocery store, every flaw magnified. But what truly stung, what ignited a slow, simmering fire in my gut that quickly turned into a burning inferno, was the undeniable fact that this ugliness was happening right in front of Lily. Her innocent eyes were taking in every sneer, every condescending glance, every twist of their lips. She might not have understood the precise meaning of pauper or discount brands, but she understood the tone, the harshness, the way their faces contorted with unkindness, the way my shoulders had instinctively hunched, trying to make myself smaller, less visible, to disappear from their hateful gaze. The thought of her internalizing their judgment, of her believing for a second that her mother was less worthy, was unbearable. "Mommy," she whispered, her voice barely audible, small and fragile like a bird's bone, a plea for understanding. Her brow furrowed, a tiny crease of concern marring her otherwise joyful face, a silent question in her innocent gaze that pierced me deeper than any insult. It was then that the shame transformed into something else entirely, a fierce, protective rage. That was it. That was the precise moment the raw humiliation transformed into a fierce, unyielding resolve. The shame that had threatened to consume me evaporated, replaced by a surge of protective fury, a primal instinct to defend my child and her perception of the world. They hadn't just disrespected me. They had tainted a simple, happy outing with my child, a cherished routine. They had, through their actions, shown her that some people believe they have the right to belittle others, to make them feel less than, simply because of perceived differences in status or wealth. They had dared to chip away at her sense of security, at her belief in the inherent goodness of the world, at her mother's strength. I wouldn't stand for it. Not for me, not anymore, and certainly not for her. My daughter deserved to see her mother stand tall, not shrink to fight for what was right, not cower in the face of such unwarranted cruelty. This was no longer just about strawberries. It was about a fundamental principle of respect and dignity. My voice, surprisingly steady despite the tremor that had begun deep in my hands, despite the rapid beat of my heart, cut through the buzzing silence of the aisle, gaining volume and conviction with each syllable. "Excuse me," I said, my gaze locking onto the woman's now slightly surprised face, her smug expression faltering. "You have absolutely no right to speak to me that way, especially not in front of my daughter. Your words are uncalled for, rude, and frankly, disgusting. This is a public place, and I am a paying customer just like you. My financial situation is none of your concern, and it certainly doesn't give you permission to verbally abuse me." The woman's lips curled into a sneer, a flicker of genuine anger replacing her previous boredom, her composure cracking. She let out a brittle, mirthless laugh that grated on my nerves, a sound devoid of humor. "Oh, is the little pauper offended? What are you going to do? Cry to the manager? Call your mommy? Do you even have a mommy to call? Or are you just here to complain about your pathetic life?" Her eyes flickered to Lily, a mocking glint in them that made my blood run cold. A deliberate attempt to further wound me through my child, to imply that even my motherhood was somehow inadequate. "No," I replied, meeting her gaze squarely, my voice gaining strength with each word, a newfound steel in its tone that surprised even myself. "I'm going to do something about it. Something more than just crying." Without breaking eye contact, I reached for my phone, my fingers surprisingly deft despite the adrenaline coursing through me. I raised it, discreetly but clearly, and snapped a photo of them, capturing their shocked faces and the self-satisfied smirk that had just begun to fade from the man's face, replaced now by a flicker of alarm and indignation. They scoffed again, a combined sound of dismissal and annoyance, a final attempt to assert their dominance, as if I were nothing more than a momentary nuisance, easily forgotten. They turned their backs, resuming their shopping as if nothing had happened, confident in their anonymity and perceived superiority, believing they had won. But I knew with every fiber of my being that this wasn't over, not by a long shot. This was just the beginning. The next few days were a blur of simmering anger and steely determination. The image of Lily's confused, worried face was seared into my mind, a constant reminder of why I couldn't let this go. It fueled my resolve, giving me the courage to step into an arena I knew nothing about, an unfamiliar world of legal battles. I recounted the incident to my closest friend, Maria, who, by sheer coincidence, worked in legal aid. Her face, usually so warm and open, hardened as I spoke, her empathy a comforting balm that helped me articulate the depth of the pain. She listened patiently, her jaw tightening when I described Lily's reaction and the Hendersons' callous disregard for basic human decency. "Evelyn," she said, her voice firm, her legal mind already analyzing the situation, "this isn't just about rude behavior. Their words and actions were clearly designed to cause distress, to humiliate you. And they did so in a public place, targeting you in front of your child. That's a serious matter. You could pursue a civil case for intentional infliction of emotional distress and defamation. The photo is crucial evidence, Evelyn. It shows their faces, their expressions, and it proves they were there. The idea felt daunting, like David facing Goliath with nothing but a slingshot and a prayer. A monumental task for someone who had always shied away from confrontation. I was a single mother, working hard to make ends meet, juggling a demanding job with Lily's needs, and the thought of navigating the complex, intimidating world of the legal system was overwhelming. My initial reaction was fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of the exorbitant cost, fear of losing and feeling even more humiliated, of having my vulnerability exposed further. But every time I looked at Lily, her bright spirit still intact, her laughter echoing through our small apartment, a beacon of pure joy, I knew I had to see it through. This wasn't just about me reclaiming my dignity. It was about teaching her a fundamental lesson. That dignity is worth fighting for, that bullies don't always win, and that silence in the face of injustice only emboldens the perpetrators. It was about showing her that her mother was strong, capable, and could stand up for what was right, no matter the challenge, no matter how intimidating the opponents. Maria, true to her word, helped me connect with Sarah Jenkins, a pro bono lawyer known for her unwavering commitment to justice for those who couldn't afford traditional representation. Sarah was a sharp woman with kind eyes that held a surprising depth of understanding and a steely resolve that belied her gentle demeanor. She listened patiently to my story, her expression hardening perceptibly when I described the Henderson's specific words and the visible impact on Lily. "Miss Reed," Sarah explained, her voice calm and authoritative, yet filled with conviction. "What they did goes beyond simple rudeness. Their actions were a deliberate attempt to cause you distress and damage your reputation, and the fact that it happened in front of your child adds a significant layer of malice. We have a strong case. This is about protecting your emotional well-being and, more importantly, your daughter's sense of security and safety in the world. We will seek damages not just for your distress, but also to cover any legal fees and to send a clear message." The legal process, as Sarah had warned, was slow, methodical, and often frustrating. A bureaucratic maze designed to wear down the faint of heart, to test one's endurance. It was filled with endless paperwork, affidavits detailing every moment, interrogatories demanding precise answers, motions and counter-motions that seemed to endlessly delay progress, meticulous documentation of every detail, and the constant, gnawing anxiety of the unknown. We initiated the lawsuit, and the defendants, a wealthy couple indeed, Mr. and Mrs. Henderson, initially tried to dismiss the case as frivolous, a desperate attempt by a disgruntled individual to extort money from them. Their high-powered lawyers, a firm known for its aggressive tactics and seemingly bottomless resources, sent intimidating letters, filled with dense legal jargon and thinly veiled threats, suggesting I was merely seeking financial gain, trying to capitalize on a minor misunderstanding, and that I should drop the case to avoid further embarrassment and potential countersuits. But I held firm. This wasn't about money, though compensation would certainly help with the mounting bills and the emotional toll. It was about accountability. It was about sending a clear message that such behavior would not be tolerated. It was about justice, pure and simple, a principle that transcended their wealth and influence. We went through depositions, grueling sessions where I had to recount the incident again and again, reliving the humiliation, facing their lawyers' probing questions designed to trip me up to make me doubt my own memory, to portray me as unstable or opportunistic. Ms. Reed, are you sure you heard pauper or discount brands? Perhaps you misheard. The lighting in the store can be deceptive, can't it? They would ask, their voices dripping with feigned concern, their eyes cold and calculating. Isn't it true you were simply upset about not getting the last strawberries and perhaps overreacted? I felt vulnerable, exposed. My emotions laid bare for their scrutiny, every word twisted, every reaction analyzed. But each time I thought of Lily, her innocent, trusting face, her small hand in mine, I found renewed strength, a quiet resolve to speak my truth, no matter how uncomfortable. Sarah was a rock, guiding me through the legal labyrinth, preparing me for every tactic, every question. Her steady presence, a constant source of reassurance, her quiet nods encouraging me to persist. She advised me to remain calm, factual, and to always look them in the eye, to project unwavering conviction. The Hendersons, throughout this preliminary phase, maintained their air of haughty indifference. They arrived at depositions in designer clothes, their faces carefully blank, barely acknowledging my presence, as if I were a speck of dust. Their arrogance manifested in subtle ways, lingering glances of contempt, impatient sighs, dismissive waves of the hand when their lawyers spoke, as if they were bored by the proceedings. They seemed genuinely bewildered that someone like me would dare to challenge them, that their words, uttered so casually, could have consequences, that their privilege might not shield them from accountability. They were convinced this was a minor inconvenience that would quickly fade away, a temporary annoyance before they returned to their lives of Maria, true to her word, helped me connect with Sarah Jenkins, a pro bono lawyer known for her unwavering commitment to justice for those who couldn't afford traditional representation. Sarah was a sharp woman with kind eyes that held a surprising depth of understanding and a steely resolve that belied her gentle demeanor. She listened patiently to my story, her expression hardening perceptibly when I described the Hendersons' specific words and the visible impact on Lily. Miss Reed, Sarah explained, her voice calm and authoritative, yet filled with conviction. What they did goes beyond simple rudeness. Their actions were a deliberate attempt to cause you distress and damage your reputation, and the fact that it happened in front of your child adds a significant layer of malice. We have a strong case. This is about protecting your emotional well-being and, more importantly, your daughter's sense of security and safety in the world. We will seek damages not just for your distress, but also to cover any legal fees and to send a clear message. The legal process, as Sarah had warned, was slow, methodical, and often frustrating. A bureaucratic maze designed to wear down the faint of heart, to test one's endurance. It was filled with endless paperwork, affidavits detailing every moment, interrogatories demanding precise answers, motions and counter-motions that seemed to endlessly delay progress, meticulous documentation of every detail, and the constant, gnawing anxiety of the unknown. We initiated the lawsuit, and the defendants, a wealthy couple indeed, Mr. and Mrs. Henderson, initially tried to dismiss the case as frivolous, a desperate attempt by a disgruntled individual to extort money from them. Their high-powered lawyers, a firm known for its aggressive tactics and seemingly bottomless resources, sent intimidating letters, filled with dense legal jargon and thinly veiled threats, suggesting I was merely seeking financial gain. trying to capitalize on a minor misunderstanding, and that I should drop the case to avoid further embarrassment and potential countersuits. But I held firm. This wasn't about money, though compensation would certainly help with the mounting bills and the emotional toll. It was about accountability. It was about sending a clear message that such behavior would not be tolerated. It was about justice, pure and simple, a principle that transcended their wealth and influence. We went through depositions, grueling sessions where I had to recount the incident again and again, reliving the humiliation, facing their lawyers' probing questions designed to trip me up, to make me doubt my own memory, to portray me as unstable or opportunistic. Ms. Reed, are you sure you heard pauper or discount brands? Perhaps you misheard. The lighting in the store can be deceptive, can't it? They would ask, their voices dripping with feigned concern, their eyes cold and calculating. Isn't it true you were simply upset about not getting the last strawberries and perhaps overreacted? I felt vulnerable, exposed. My emotions laid bare for their scrutiny, every word twisted, every reaction analyzed. But each time I thought of Lily, her innocent, trusting face, her small hand in mine, I found renewed strength, a quiet resolve to speak my truth, no matter how uncomfortable. Sarah was a rock, guiding me through the legal labyrinth, preparing me for every tactic, every question. Her steady presence, a constant source of reassurance, her quiet nods encouraging me to persist. She advised me to remain calm, factual, and to always look them in the eye, to project unwavering conviction. The Hendersons, throughout this preliminary phase, maintained their air of haughty indifference. They arrived at depositions in designer clothes, their faces carefully blank, barely acknowledging my presence, as if I were a speck of dust. Their arrogance manifested in subtle ways, lingering glances of contempt, impatient sighs, dismissive waves of the hand when their lawyers spoke, as if they were bored by the proceedings. They seemed genuinely bewildered that someone like me would dare to challenge them, that their words, uttered so casually, could have consequences, that their privilege might not shield them from accountability. They were convinced this was a minor inconvenience that would quickly fade away, a temporary annoyance before they returned to their lives of unburdened luxury. Balancing the demands of the lawsuit with single motherhood was a constant struggle. Late-night calls with Sarah, poring over documents after Lily was asleep, the mental exhaustion of recounting the incident, the emotional drain of facing the Hendersons. It all took its toll. There were days I wanted to give up, to just let it go and move on, to escape the relentless pressure. But then I'd remember Lily's small, worried face in the grocery aisle, the way her eyes had questioned me, and the fire would reignite. This was for her. This was to show her that some things are worth fighting for, even when the fight is hard and long, even when the odds seem stacked against you. It was a lesson I needed to teach her, and perhaps to remind myself of too. Finally, after months that felt like an eternity, stretched thin by the weight of anticipation and the slow grind of the legal system, the day of the hearing arrived. The small courtroom, with its dark wood paneling and hushed atmosphere, felt vast and imposing, a stage for a drama that held immense personal significance. The air was thick with tension, a palpable weight that pressed down on everyone present, a mixture of nerves and hope. Lily was safely with my mother in the waiting area, shielded from the direct proceedings, playing with her dolls, but her presence, her innocent spirit, was a palpable force within me, a silent cheerleader urging me forward, a constant reminder of my purpose. I had chosen a simple, dignified dress, a deep navy blue, my hair pulled back neatly, a deliberate choice to project strength, quiet confidence, not victimhood or desperation. I wanted to be seen as a woman who knew her worth. The Hendersons sat across the aisle, their posture rigid, their faces a mask of bored superiority, as if this entire ordeal was a tiresome inconvenience beneath their notice, a mere formality. They exchanged whispered comments with their lawyer, occasionally glancing at me with a mix of annoyance and thinly veiled contempt, a silent challenge that I met with a steady gaze. Their lawyer presented their defense, attempting to frame the incident as a minor misunderstanding, a misguided attempt at humor that had been misinterpreted by an overly sensitive individual. He painted me as someone seeking attention, or perhaps financial gain, from a harmless jest, suggesting I was exaggerating for effect, fabricating distress. He even tried to imply that my emotional distress was pre-existing, unrelated to their client's actions, a convenient scapegoat for their behavior. He brought up my financial situation, subtly trying to imply that my lawsuit was motivated by greed. But my lawyer, Sarah, was relentless. She systematically dismantled their narrative, piece by painstaking piece, her arguments precise and unyielding, leaving no room for doubt. She presented my testimony, clear and unvarnished, detailing the emotional impact of their words, the sleepless nights, the anxiety, the lingering sense of public shame that had followed me. She showed the photo I'd taken, irrefutable evidence of their presence and their expressions, a silent accusation that spoke volumes. She even called a store employee, a young man named Kevin, who had been stocking shelves nearby and had witnessed part of the exchange, corroborating my account of their aggressive tone and demeaning language. His testimony, simple and honest, delivered with a quiet sincerity, chipped away at the Hendersons' carefully constructed facade, exposing the ugliness beneath their polished exteriors. He remembered the woman's exact words, the man's sneer, and the way Lily had looked up at me. When it was my turn to speak on the stand, I took a deep breath, the air tasting metallic, my heart thrumming a nervous rhythm against my ribs. I looked directly at the judge, a woman with a calm, discerning gaze that seemed to see right through pretense, a silent promise of fairness and impartiality. I described the quiet afternoon, the simple joy of shopping with Lily, her innocent babble, the small tender moments that made up our ordinary life, moments that were suddenly shattered. And then I recounted the sudden, brutal verbal assault, the shock, the shame, and the crushing realization that my daughter was witnessing it all, absorbing the venom. Her world momentarily darkened. I spoke of the fear that Lily, at such a tender age, would internalize their cruelty, that she would somehow believe their words, that she would learn that some people could treat others with such callous disregard, my voice clear and unwavering, resonating with a conviction that surprised even myself. They disrespected the sanctity of a parent's bond with her child. They tried to diminish me, to make me feel worthless in front of the person I cherish most in this world. And that, Your Honor, is an offense that cuts deeper than any insult, any financial loss. It's an attack on a mother's ability to protect her child's innocence and sense of worth, to teach her that she is valuable and deserving of respect, regardless of her circumstances. I paused, letting the weight of my words settle, my gaze sweeping over the Hendersons, who now avoided my eyes. As I spoke, the Hendersons shifted uncomfortably in their seats, their faces slowly losing some of their smugness, replaced by a flicker of genuine unease, perhaps even a hint of fear. For the first time, they looked truly vulnerable, stripped of their usual arrogance, their carefully cultivated image crumbling under the weight of truth and public scrutiny. The judge's expression remained neutral, but I felt a subtle shift in the atmosphere, a sense that my words had landed, that they had resonated with the gravity of the situation. The judge listened intently, her gaze unwavering, occasionally asking clarifying questions that cut to the heart of the matter, demonstrating her deep engagement with the facts and her commitment to understanding the full scope of the incident. The hours crawled by, each minute feeling like an eternity, stretched thin by the weight of anticipation, as arguments were made, rebuttals offered, and evidence scrutinized. The legal jargon filled the air, but beneath it, the human element of the case, the emotional impact, was undeniable. Then, after what felt like an agonizing wait during the recess, a silence so profound it was almost deafening, the judge returned to the bench, her demeanor composed, her decision imminent. After careful consideration of the testimony and evidence presented, she began, her voice calm but firm, resonating with an undeniable authority that filled the courtroom. The court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Ms. Evelyn Reed. A wave of relief, so profound it almost buckled my knees, washed over me. It was a physical sensation, like a heavy burden being lifted from my shoulders, a sudden lightness in my chest, a release of months of pent-up tension. I gripped the edge of the table, my knuckles white, tears pricking at the corners of my eyes, blurring the outlines of the courtroom into a shimmering haze of victory. The judge continued, detailing the Hendersons' liability for intentional infliction of emotional distress and ordering them to pay a significant sum in damages, a sum that would alleviate some of the financial strain and serve as a tangible acknowledgement of their wrongdoing, a clear consequence for their actions. But more importantly than the monetary award, she delivered a stern, unequivocal rebuke, emphasizing the paramount importance of civility and respect in public spaces, particularly when children are present. This court will not tolerate behavior that seeks to humiliate or demean individuals, especially when such actions impact innocent minors, causing them distress and undermining their sense of security and self-worth. She stated, her gaze sweeping over the Hendersons, who now sat utterly deflated, their faces a mask of shock and disbelief, their privilege offering no shield against the law, their arrogance having finally met its match. The air went out of their arrogant sails entirely. Their carefully constructed world of entitlement had crashed down around them, exposed for its ugliness. They had been exposed, held accountable, and publicly reprimanded by the very system they likely believed was above them, a system they thought they could manipulate or ignore with their wealth and influence. Their expressions of shock and humiliation were a silent testament to the unexpected power of justice, a stark contrast to the smugness they had worn just moments before. Stepping out of the courtroom, the sunlight felt brighter, the air crisper, imbued with a newfound lightness and freedom that filled my lungs. My mother and Lily rushed towards me, their faces alight with anticipation, their smiles reflecting my own burgeoning joy. Lily, sensing the profound change in my demeanor, the lifting of the heavy weight I had carried for months, all beamed. "Mommy, are we going to get ice cream now?" she asked, her voice full of hope. Her innocent request, a perfect counterpoint to the gravity of the moment, a reminder of the simple joys we were now free to embrace fully. I knelt down, pulling her into a tight embrace, burying my face in her soft, sweet-smelling hair. "Yes, sweetie," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion, a mixture of relief, triumph, and profound gratitude. "We are. And Mommy just showed you that standing up for yourself and for what's right always pays off. Even when it's hard, even when it feels impossible, you must always stand firm. Your voice matters, and your dignity is something no one can take away from you." The court had given me justice, not just in monetary terms, which would certainly help us rebuild and alleviate some financial burdens, but in the profound reaffirmation of my dignity, and more importantly, in the validation of Lily's inherent worth and the protection of her innocent spirit. It was a victory not just for me, but for every parent, every person who has ever been made to feel small, insignificant, or unworthy by the casual cruelty of others. It was a testament to the fact that even the most privileged are not above the law, and that words, even seemingly casual ones, can have profound consequences. And it was a crucial, unforgettable lesson for Lily, that even in the face of disrespect, you can find your voice, fight for your worth, and ultimately prevail. The Hendersons' attempt to diminish me had, instead, made me immeasurably stronger, more resilient, and had shown my daughter the true, unwavering meaning of courage and the enduring power of justice. It was a day that started with humiliation, but ended with a profound sense of empowerment, a lesson etched into our lives forever.